There are stories whispered through time that were never meant to be remembered, fragments of truth buried beneath centuries of silence. Among them lies the tale of a manuscript, one so extraordinary and dangerous that it was deliberately erased from human memory. This was not an ordinary text, but a record said to have been written by none other than Metatron, the celestial scribe, the voice of divine knowledge, the guardian of secrets too radiant for mortal eyes. To even speak of this manuscript was considered an act of defiance, for within its lines resided visions of a realm no human was supposed to glimpse, the kingdom of the gods. The ancients believed that this manuscript described landscapes beyond creation itself, places not confined to earth or stars, but dwelling in the very architecture of eternity. And yet, almost every trace of it vanished. Priests, rulers, and guardians of power ensured it would not pass into the hands of men who might use it for their own ambitions. What remains are fragments, broken whispers of a forgotten scripture scattered across apocryphal writings and rare mystical traditions. But the essence of this manuscript persists, like an echo vibrating through the collective unconscious, a resonance that stirs whenever humanity approaches a threshold of awakening. Metatron is no ordinary angel. According to legends, he once walked among men as Enoch, a figure of wisdom and virtue, before being transformed into the celestial intermediary. It was he who recorded the words of the divine, who inscribed in eternal tablets the blueprint of creation itself. If such a being chose to write of the kingdom of the gods, it was not merely a metaphor, it was a revelation, an unveiling of dimensions that lie hidden behind the veil of ordinary perception. And so the story begins with a forbidden truth. Metatron left behind a key, and humanity lost it. Or perhaps humanity was forced to forget it. Imagine a text so powerful that it described the throne of eternity, the rivers of living light, the palaces of consciousness where divine beings reside. Imagine reading words that could dissolve the boundaries of matter, transporting the reader into states of vision where the finite self collapses into infinity. The manuscript was not knowledge, it was initiation. And that is why it had to be concealed. For a humanity unprepared, the kingdom of the gods would not be paradise but madness. The light would blind, the truth would shatter fragile minds. The guardians of faith and power, fearful of chaos, decreed the manuscript must vanish. Yet, here and now, fragments return. Not through dusty libraries or ancient ruins, but through the human spirit itself. In dreams, in visions, in sudden glimpses of a reality that feels more real than the physical world, people begin to remember. Perhaps the manuscript was never destroyed. Perhaps Metatron inscribed it not on fragile parchment, but on the very core of the human soul. And when the time arrives, when the seeker is ready, the forgotten text awakens within, reminding us that the kingdom of the gods is not lost. It is waiting. To understand the depth of the manuscript and why it was concealed, one must first understand the figure of Metatron himself. Unlike the distant and unreachable angels of tradition, Metatron occupies a unique place in the celestial hierarchy. He was once a man known as Enoch, a sage who walked so closely with the divine that he was taken from the world of flesh and elevated to a throne among the stars. Transformation reshaped him from mortal into immortal, from seeker into scribe. And in that transformation, he was entrusted with secrets no other angel or human could hold. Metatron is often called the Chancellor of Heaven or the Lesser YHWH, titles that suggest a proximity to the divine presence unimaginable to ordinary beings. His role was not merely to witness creation, but to write it. With his quill of light, he recorded decrees that shaped the universe, ensuring that the cosmic order would be preserved. Every word, every number, every vibration of existence was transcribed through his hand. And in these writings, hidden among celestial decrees, was one text that revealed what none should have seen, the map of the kingdom of the gods. Why would Metatron write such a thing? Perhaps because even the divine required a record of its own grandeur, or perhaps because humanity, in a distant future, would need to remember what it had forgotten. Legends say that the manuscript did not describe a metaphorical paradise, but a real dimension where gods walked among eternal rivers of fire and thrones of crystal. It spoke of gates made of consciousness itself, and of beings who shaped not worlds but destinies. These were not stories meant for comfort or worship. They were instructions, coordinates, and revelations. And yet, this knowledge came with peril. The secret Metatron guarded was not merely a location, but a state of being. To enter the kingdom of the gods, one had to abandon the chains of mortality, dissolve the illusions of the material world, and embrace the terrifying brilliance of truth. Few could withstand such a vision. To see eternity unfiltered is to risk madness, to lose oneself in the immensity of divine light. This is why Metatron guarded the manuscript not against enemies, but against humanity itself. For the danger was not theft, but misuse. There are whispers among mystics that Metatron embedded codes within the manuscript, veils upon veils of meaning, so that only those who were ready could understand. To the unprepared, it would appear as nonsense, a chaos of symbols. But to the awakened, every line would open a door. Every phrase would ignite a memory. Every word would reveal a step toward the kingdom. This duality concealment within revelation was the true genius of Metatron. The secret, then, was never fully hidden. It was scattered across prayers, visions, and fragments of mystical tradition. Pieces of the manuscript live within Kabbalistic writings, within apocryphal texts, within the dreams of visionaries who did not understand what they saw. And the question remains, was this dispersal intentional? Did Metatron design it so that one day, across centuries, scattered seekers would gather fragments and piece them back together? If so, the manuscript was never forgotten, it was waiting, safeguarded within the labyrinth of time, guarded by Metatron himself. For centuries, whispers of a forbidden text echoed through hidden corridors of history. Scholars spoke of it only in hushed tones, and mystics hinted at its existence as if uttering its name could summon both wonder and wrath. This was the manuscript attributed to Metatron, a document that dared to reveal what no temple inscription or sacred scroll had ever openly declared: the very structure of the kingdom of the gods. Unlike the scriptures preserved in canons and guarded in rituals, this text was elusive, as though it refused to be contained by the material world. It appeared, vanished, and reappeared across cultures like a shadow of forgotten truth. Accounts of the manuscript's survival are fragmented, scattered across apocryphal traditions. Some say fragments of it were hidden within the Dead Sea Scrolls, encrypted in symbols too obscure for ordinary eyes. Others claim it resurfaced in the hands of medieval mystics, only to disappear again under the fire of persecution. A few even insist that the Templars once possessed copies of passages, seeing in them a key not only to divine wisdom but to powers that could alter kingdoms. Wherever the manuscript appeared, turmoil followed, as if reality itself resisted the unveiling of its contents. Descriptions of its form are equally enigmatic. Some envision it as a scroll of luminous letters, etched not with ink but with fire that glowed in the dark. Others describe it as a codex bound in strange materials, indestructible by time or decay. The most haunting traditions suggest it was never physical at all but inscribed in the ether, existing only for those capable of perceiving it through visions. These conflicting accounts serve only to deepen the mystery. Was the manuscript ever truly written, or was it a living revelation, shaping itself differently for each seeker who dared to glimpse it? What made the manuscript dangerous was not its existence, but its content. It was said to describe realms beyond mortal comprehension, regions of light where gods convened, cities woven from sound and vibration, rivers that carried the essence of creation itself. It charted the hierarchy of beings who dwell in those dimensions, from radiant overseers to nameless guardians. But more than description, it contained instructions, steps that could guide a mortal consciousness to cross the boundary and enter. In those pages, the veil between human and divine was thinner than a breath, and that was the very reason it had to be concealed. As time moved on, deliberate efforts ensured that the manuscript would be forgotten. Libraries burned, mystics silenced, and records erased. By the Middle Ages, only whispers remained, hidden in esoteric symbols or allegories that seemed meaningless to most. Yet the legend of the lost manuscript refused to die. It lived in the margins of history, resurfacing when humanity approached thresholds of transformation, only to retreat again into obscurity. Even now, seekers across the world speak of encountering fragments, not physical pages, but impressions in dreams, sudden visions, or words that appear in meditative silence. The manuscript seems to exist like a phantom text, one that cannot be destroyed because it is not bound by paper, but by the fabric of consciousness itself, lost in plain sight, waiting for the one who can truly remember. The manuscript, in its scattered whispers, described not an abstract idea but a place, a realm of staggering magnificence that came to be known as the Kingdom of the Gods. It was not heaven as painted in the stained glass of temples, nor the mythic Olympus of old epics. It was something beyond both myth and dogma, a living architecture of pure consciousness, unfolding in patterns of light that mortals could barely imagine. According to fragments attributed to Metatron, this kingdom was not somewhere above or outside, but interwoven with reality itself, existing parallel to every breath of existence. Descriptions spoke of rivers not of water, but of luminous currents, flowing with the essence of creation itself. Palaces rose from vibrations, their walls made not of stone but of sound, harmonic tones so powerful that they resonated through the soul of anyone who heard them. Thrones were said to blaze like suns, upon which sat beings whose presence radiated both beauty and terror, for their gaze pierced directly into the essence of a soul. To step into this kingdom was to be stripped of illusion, to stand naked before the unfiltered truth of existence. The manuscript hinted at 7 great halls within the kingdom, each one a mirror of divine order. The first hall was said to contain the archives of eternity, where every moment of time past, present, and future was inscribed upon living tablets of fire. The second hall glowed with the light of creation, its walls alive with constellations being born. The third was a chamber of silence, where the voice of the divine could be heard only by those who had quieted every earthly desire. And so on, each hall ascending in intensity, until the final chamber where the essence of the divine presence could be encountered directly. Yet the manuscript warned of the dangers of beholding such realms. The kingdom of the gods was not meant for the curious or the ambitious. Those who sought it for power or glory risked dissolution, for the light within those halls was said to dissolve the false self like wax before fire. Only those who carried purity of intent, humility, and readiness to surrender everything could endure its brilliance. The text emphasized again and again, the kingdom was not paradise but truth, and truth can both heal and destroy. To the few who claimed to have glimpsed it, whether through dreams, visions, or altered states, the kingdom was described as more real than the physical world. Colors beyond human perception, sounds that carried meanings deeper than language, and a sense of unity that dissolved all boundaries of identity. These testimonies, though rare and inconsistent, shared one common thread. Once the kingdom was seen, nothing in the ordinary world could ever feel the same. Thus, the manuscript was not merely a description but a map, a guide toward a realm hidden in plain sight. It did not tell its readers to seek the kingdom in distant skies, but to look within, where the gates stood waiting, veiled only by the illusions of the mind. The kingdom of the gods was less a destination than a revelation, a truth awaiting those who dared to awaken. If the manuscript described the kingdom of the gods with such clarity and grandeur, why is it no longer with us? Why did it vanish into the silence of forgotten centuries? The answer lies in a deliberate act of erasure what mystics came to call the Great Forgetting. It was not a simple accident of time or the fragility of parchment. It was a decision carried out with intention to cast the memory of the manuscript into shadow. Ancient traditions suggest that priests and sages, upon realizing the manuscript's potential, feared the consequences of its knowledge falling into unprepared hands. To read its lines was to risk awakening forces beyond control. Those who glimpsed even fragments of its truth sometimes emerged broken, consumed by visions they could not understand. Some returned with eyes glowing with fire, speaking of things no one else could see. Others fell into madness, their minds shattered by a light too strong for the human frame. The guardians of the sacred realized then that the danger was not in the manuscript itself, but in humanity's inability to bear its weight. And so, across different cultures and eras, efforts were made to hide, distort, or destroy it. Libraries that contained references to its content mysteriously burned. Scholars who spoke too freely vanished, their works condemned as heresy. Whole sects dedicated to preserving its fragments were wiped from history, leaving behind only whispers and apocryphal texts. What might appear as coincidence in the eyes of historians becomes, under closer reflection, a pattern, a calculated campaign to bury the truth deeper than any tomb. Yet the forgetting was not merely external. Some mystics claim that the divine itself played a role, veiling human memory to prevent catastrophe. According to these teachings, the manuscript was not simply hidden in secret chambers, but erased from the collective consciousness of humanity. Its words still existed, but humanity had been made unable to see them. This was the fall, not merely a descent into ignorance, but an intentional descent, a protection against light too blinding for fragile eyes. But there is a paradox at the heart of this erasure. If the manuscript was truly lost, why do fragments continue to surface? Why do seekers across centuries describe visions that echo its descriptions? Perhaps the forgetting was never absolute. Perhaps Metatron himself, foreseeing this, designed the manuscript with layers of concealment so that while it could be hidden, it could never truly be destroyed. Each generation, at moments of spiritual crisis, would hear its echoes. Each soul ready to awaken would feel its resonance. Thus, the forgetting and the fall were not the end, but a suspension. Humanity was cast into a long night of slumber, shielded from truths it could not yet withstand. And yet, beneath that sleep, the memory remained alive, dormant but unbroken, waiting for the hour when the world would once again stand at the threshold of awakening. The manuscript was not gone. It was waiting for us to remember. It is tempting to think of the manuscript as nothing more than a relic of the past, a story buried beneath centuries of myth and silence. But the truth is more unsettling. It was never meant only for priests, mystics, or chosen scribes. The manuscript was always connected to you. Its words, though hidden, are written in a language deeper than ink, a language woven into the human soul itself. And that means fragments of it are already alive within you, waiting for recognition. Think about the moments in your life when reality has felt thinner, when the ordinary world seemed to crack open and something greater shone through. Perhaps it came in a dream so vivid that it lingered for years, carrying symbols you could never fully explain. Perhaps it appeared as a sudden intuition, an inner voice whispering a truth you had no way of knowing but later proved correct. Or perhaps it came in silence, a fleeting sense that you were not just a body moving through time, but a consciousness connected to something immeasurable. These moments are not random. They are fragments of the manuscript alive within you. The kingdom of the gods described by Metatron is not only a distant realm beyond the stars. It is a dimension that touches the core of your being. The manuscript was said to describe the gates to that realm. And those gates are not hidden in temples or mountains. They are hidden in perception. Each vision, each dream, each moment of inexplicable clarity is a door. The problem is that most people pass through without realizing what they have touched. They dismiss it as imagination, as coincidence, as nothing. and in doing so, they close the gate before it can open fully. But if you listen closely, if you begin to treat these moments not as accidents but as signs, you will discover that the manuscript is still teaching. It is not dead ink but living guidance. Its words rise within the silence of meditation, in the images that emerge during sleep, in the shiver that runs through your body when you feel you are being reminded of something you cannot quite recall. The manuscript is not outside you, it is etched into your soul, and remembering it is part of your awakening. This is why the story matters to you now. Humanity as a whole is moving closer to thresholds of transformation, the same kind that once forced the manuscript into hiding. The difference is that today, the veil is thinner and more people are beginning to feel it. If you have ever felt that you do not belong entirely to this world, if you have ever sensed that something greater is calling to you, then you are already brushing against the forgotten words of Metatron. The question is no longer whether the manuscript exists in libraries or ruins. The real question is whether you are ready to remember it within yourself. If fragments of the manuscript survived across time, if echoes of its truth still resonate in dreams and visions, then one must ask, who fought so hard to ensure it remained hidden? The answer is not simple, for it was not only one group, one religion, or one empire. The suppression of the manuscript was a convergence of powers human and non-human, each with their own reasons for burying the truth. In ancient times, priestly castes understood the manuscript's potential. They knew that if ordinary men and women gained access to its knowledge, the monopoly of the sacred would collapse. Temples derived their power from being the intermediaries between the divine and the masses. But the manuscript shattered that hierarchy. It described a kingdom that could be entered directly, without the sanction of priests, without rituals controlled by institutions. If people realized the divine was accessible within themselves, temples would become irrelevant. For that reason, religious elites branded the manuscript heretical and consigned its fragments to flames. Later, empires feared it for different reasons. The manuscript did not simply describe a mystical paradise, it hinted at powers of transformation, states of consciousness that could unbind the chains of obedience. A population awakened to divine truth is a population less willing to bow to kings and emperors. Sovereigns and rulers understood this instinctively. A manuscript that spoke of higher laws, of a kingdom above earthly thrones, was a threat to their authority. And so, political powers joined religious ones in erasing its traces. Ensuring loyalty to the state would not be challenged by loyalty to eternity, but beyond human motives lies something darker. Mystics across centuries whispered that unseen forces, beings who thrive in the shadows of ignorance, labored to keep the manuscript buried. They feared the light it carried, for such truth dissolves their influence. These entities, sometimes called archons or lords of illusion, weave webs of distraction and fear to keep humanity trapped in forgetfulness. For them, the manuscript was poison, a key that could free countless souls from their grip. To ensure its silence, they infiltrated human structures of power, whispering to rulers and priests alike that concealment was protection. The tragedy is that many of those who hid the manuscript believed they were doing good. They told themselves that humanity was not ready, that exposure to such brilliance would destroy fragile minds. In part, they were right. Not everyone could bear the vision, but the line between protection and control blurred quickly. What began as safeguarding became hoarding. What began as caution became tyranny. And so, knowledge meant to guide humanity was turned into forbidden fruit, guarded by fear and suppression. Even today, remnants of this concealment remain. Knowledge is filtered, visions are dismissed, and seekers are told to obey rather than to awaken. But the truth cannot be buried forever. The fact that you are hearing this story now is proof that the guardians of silence are losing their hold. For every age of suppression comes an age of revelation. And in this age, the manuscript stirs again. For centuries, the manuscript of Metatron was thought to be buried beyond recovery. erased from the scrolls of history and locked behind veils of silence. And yet, as humanity moves deeper into an age of transformation, whispers of its return grow louder. The manuscript does not reappear in the way scholars expect, no intact scroll found in a hidden cave, no codex pulled from ancient ruins. Instead, it resurfaces in subtle and mysterious ways, as if the text itself had chosen a new form for this new age. Fragments have begun to surface in places no one anticipated. Scholars translating obscure apocrypha stumble upon passages that echo descriptions of luminous rivers and crystalline thrones. Mystics in distant corners of the world, without contact or shared tradition, describe visions strikingly similar to the kingdom of the gods. Even modern seekers, through meditation, near-death experiences, or altered states, report encounters with landscapes that match ancient accounts once attributed to Metatron's pen. These convergences are too precise to be dismissed as coincidence. They are the manuscript returning, not as parchment, but as living revelation. Some researchers speak of dreams that repeat with uncanny precision across cultures, vast libraries of light, halls lined with books that glow with fire, and voices that whisper of forgotten truths. Others report synchronicities too sharp to ignore symbols appearing in unrelated texts, numbers recurring in sequences that mirror Kabbalistic codes. The manuscript, it seems, has woven itself into the collective memory of humanity, waiting to be recognized. It is no longer hidden in one place. It is dispersed everywhere, a puzzle scattered across souls. This return is not without resistance. Just as in ages past, there are forces that attempt to suppress these awakenings. Skeptics dismiss the visions as fantasy, institutions label them heresy, and systems of distraction keep people too busy to notice what stirs within. But unlike before, the concealment cannot hold. The manuscript no longer depends on fragile ink or guarded temples. It now exists as resonance, vibrating through human consciousness itself. To silence it would mean silencing the very spirit of humanity, and that is impossible. For those who listen, the return of the manuscript is felt personally. It might arrive as a sudden dream of walking through radiant halls, or as an intuition that pierces ordinary thought with clarity. It might come as the haunting sense that you are remembering something you never learned, recognizing places you never visited. These experiences are not illusions. They are the manuscript knocking at the door of your awareness, urging you to open. The return of Metatron's manuscript is not about archaeology or discovery. It is about awakening. The kingdom it describes is not merely a realm to be entered, but a truth to be remembered. As more and more people begin to recall fragments, the collective memory strengthens. And when enough of humanity remembers, the manuscript will no longer be lost. It will be alive again, written not on paper, but in the soul of a generation ready to reclaim it. If the manuscript is returning not through stone libraries, but through human consciousness, how can one know they are being touched by it? The signs are subtle, yet unmistakable to those who pay attention. They are not thunderclaps or visions of angels descending from the sky. They come quietly, like whispers breaking through the noise of everyday life, reminders that the kingdom of the gods is drawing near once more. The first sign is the persistence of dreams. Ordinary dreams fade with the morning light, but there are others that linger, vivid and unshakable. You may find yourself walking through immense halls of light or gazing into rivers that shine with impossible colors. You may encounter figures whose eyes burn with both compassion and judgment. Beings who say little yet leave you changed forever. These dreams are not products of imagination. They are fragments of the manuscript stirring within you, calling you to remember what your soul already knows. Another sign is the deep sense of not belonging entirely to this world. You go through daily life, but something in you resists the illusion of normalcy. The routines, the noise, the endless distractions feel strangely hollow, as though a veil separates you from something greater. This longing, This quiet ache for something beyond the visible is a clear echo of the manuscript. It is the soul recognizing that it was never meant to remain confined to the narrow walls of material existence. There is also the sudden appearance of intuition moments when you simply know something without reason or evidence. You hear an inner voice that guides you away from danger or toward an opportunity that later proves transformative. You feel pulled to symbols, numbers, or sacred names that seem to repeat around you with uncanny precision. These are not coincidences. They are codes, fragments of the manuscript resurfacing in your life. The more you pay attention, the clearer the pattern becomes. A further sign is the deepening of silence within you. At times, without effort, you may feel an overwhelming calm descend upon your mind, a stillness in which the noise of the world fades away. In that silence, truths emerge simple, undeniable, radiant. It is in such stillness that the manuscript is most easily read, for it was never meant to be deciphered by the intellect alone, but received through the quiet recognition of the soul. Finally, there is the sense of awakening itself, the growing realization that you are part of something vast, interconnected and divine. You may feel as though you are remembering rather than learning, as if truths once lost are returning home to you. This recognition is the strongest sign of all, for it means that the manuscript is not approaching, you are already inside it, and its words are unfolding through your very life. These are the signs that the forgotten text of Metatron is alive within you. They are invitations to pay attention, to honor the whispers, to realize that you are not only hearing a story, you are becoming part of it. The story of Metatron and the forgotten manuscript is not just an echo of ancient times, it is a mirror placed before you now. Across centuries, rulers and priests tried to bury it, unseen forces tried to suppress it, and even the divine itself veiled it for the sake of protection. Yet despite all efforts, the manuscript could not be silenced. It was never only a scroll of ink and parchment. It was always something far greater, a living text inscribed into the soul of humanity. And now, in this age of awakening, it calls to you with a voice that cannot be ignored. You have heard fragments of it already in dreams that refuse to fade, in intuitions that guide your steps, in the haunting feeling that you are remembering something you were never taught. These are not coincidences. They are the words of Metatron reawakening inside you. The kingdom of the gods described in the manuscript is not distant, nor reserved for a chosen few. It exists both within and around you, waiting for the moment when your eyes are ready to see. The gates stand open, though veiled in illusion, and the choice to step closer has always been yours. The conclusion of this story is not an ending, but an invitation. The manuscript is no longer lost. It is alive in the very act of your listening, your seeking, your willingness to remember. Every thought you direct toward truth, every silence you honor within yourself, every step you take away from distraction and toward awareness, these are the ways you turn the manuscript's pages. It is not bound in libraries, it is bound in you. But there is also a call to declare, to affirm, to awaken deliberately. Ancient mystics taught that words spoken or written by the soul are more than symbols. They are acts of power, vibrations that resonate across realms. To speak a truth is to embody it, to write it is to anchor it in the fabric of existence. That is why remembering must be more than passive. It must be declared, chosen, and lived. And so, I leave you with this. The manuscript of Metatron may remain invisible to the eyes of the world, but it is visible to the eyes of your spirit. If you feel its resonance, if you sense that its story is not only history but destiny, then do not let it remain silent within you. Declare your awakening. Anchor it with your words. Write, as the seekers before you wrote, not with your fingers alone, but with your soul. I remember the kingdom of the gods. This is more than a phrase. It is a key. When you write it, when you say it, you align yourself with the manuscript's living current. You affirm to the universe that you are ready to awaken, ready to step beyond the veil, ready to reclaim what was hidden. The manuscript is no longer forgotten. It is alive in you, in me, in all who dare to remember.